You spend so much time waiting for someone to notice you, to validate your work, to clap for your effort, and to tell you that you're doing great. You post, you share, you talk, you seek approval from people who aren't even living their own truth. That's the trap most people never escape from, needing permission to believe in themselves. But the moment you stop craving validation, you take your first step toward real freedom. You start realizing that the loudest voice you'll ever need to hear is the one that comes from inside. You stop asking people to see your worth and start proving it to yourself every single day. That's where everything changes. When you focus on yourself, you begin to understand that respect isn't something people give you. It's something you earn in silence. It's earned through repetition, through late nights, early mornings, and the grind no one sees. You don't build respect by talking. You build it by doing. People say they want respect, but they don't want to do what it takes to deserve it. They want shortcuts. They want quick wins. They want the world to clap before they've done anything worth clapping for. That's not how life works. Life rewards the ones who put their heads down and outwork everyone, even when no one's watching. When I talk about focusing on yourself, I'm not talking about being selfish. I'm talking about being self-aware, knowing your weaknesses, owning your flaws, and refusing to live like you're perfect. Most people are experts at pointing out what's wrong with others, but when was the last time they turned that same energy inward? When was the last time they faced their own demons without excuses? When you start focusing on yourself, you start realizing that the biggest war is inside your mind. It's you versus the version of you that's lazy, afraid, and addicted to comfort. And every single day, that war demands a winner. The truth is, no one's coming to save you. No one's waking you up at 4 a.m. No one's stopping you from quitting. You're the one who decides how much you want this life. You're the one who decides if you'll keep chasing validation or if you'll start earning self-respect. You can either keep scrolling through people who look successful or become the kind of person that doesn't need to post every victory to feel good. When you focus on yourself, you stop comparing. You stop needing to be better than them and start fighting to be better than you were yesterday. There's something powerful that happens when you start living like you have something to prove, but only to yourself. You begin to operate from a different mindset. You stop looking at others as competition and start seeing them as reminders of what's possible. The grind becomes personal. You stop waiting for opportunities because you realize, you are the opportunity. Every day you get a chance to build something real. Your mind, your body, your discipline, your character. You don't do it for applause. You do it because you refuse to stay the same. People always ask, how do I stay consistent when no one's supporting me? The answer is simple. You don't need them. You don't need the likes, the comments, or the claps. You need to fall in love with the process, even when it's brutal. You need to fall in love with the sweat, the pain, the repetition, the silence. Because in that silence, you'll hear something you've been running from, the truth about who you are. And that truth is uncomfortable, but it's also your power. When you know yourself, when you face your flaws and still show up, you become unstoppable. Every person who has ever achieved something meaningful did it when no one was watching. They worked while others slept. They studied while others partied. They stayed disciplined while others complained. And one day, their results spoke so loud that no one could ignore them. That's what happens when you focus on yourself. You don't have to beg for attention. Your growth demands it. You don't chase the spotlight. It finds you because you've built something real, something no one can fake. There will be days when you feel invisible, when you wonder if the effort is even worth it. Those are the most critical days of your life. That's when your old habits call you back. The comfort, the validation, the easy route. That's when you have to remind yourself why you started. You started because you wanted to become someone you could respect. You wanted to look in the mirror and finally be proud of what you see, not because of how you look, but because of what you have become. You started because you were tired of pretending to be someone for others while being nothing for yourself. Stop waiting for someone to clap. Start clapping for yourself. Start acknowledging the progress no one else sees. Every time you show up, every time you push through the pain, every time you silence that voice telling you to quit, that's victory. That's how you build confidence. Confidence doesn't come from compliments. It comes from keeping the promises you make to yourself. When you say you'll do something and you actually do it, even when it's hard, you start trusting yourself. And once you trust yourself, you don't need anyone else's approval ever again. When you focus on yourself, you also start to lose people. And that's okay. Not everyone will understand your silence, your grind, your discipline. Some will call you distant, arrogant, or obsessed. Let them. They're still living for attention while you're living for purpose. You can't drag everyone to your next level. Some people are meant to stay behind because they're still chasing what you've outgrown, validation. The stronger you get mentally, the less you care about fitting in. You start valuing peace over popularity, growth over gossip, results over recognition. You'll realize that focusing on yourself doesn't isolate you. It frees you. You stop needing to explain your journey to anyone. You stop apologizing for your ambition. You start walking in silence and letting your actions echo louder than your words ever could. That's how everything begins to fall into place. Not because life suddenly gets easy, but because your mindset does. You stop reacting to everything outside you because you finally mastered what's inside you. So stop chasing validation. Stop begging for respect. Go out and earn it. Earn it in the dark when no one believes in you. Earn it in the grind when no one's watching. Earn it through the pain, the failure, and the countless nights you could have quit but didn't, because one day that same silence that felt lonely will become your greatest strength. One day the results will speak so loud that the same people who doubted you will want to know your secret. And you'll smile, not because they finally see you, but because you don't need them to anymore. That's the power of focusing on yourself. That's when everything starts to fall into place, not because the world changes, but because you do. You stop being a victim of other people's opinions and start becoming the architect of your own life. You stop waiting for permission and start taking control. You stop existing and start living. And when you reach that point, when your silence turns into power and your effort turns into results, you'll finally understand you never needed their validation. You just needed your own respect. Motivation is a spark. It feels good. It lights you up. It makes you believe you can do anything. But the truth is that spark burns out fast. It's there when the sun is shining, when things feel easy, when you're winning. But the moment life gets heavy, motivation disappears. It vanishes the second pain shows up. That's why you can't build your life around it. You can't rely on motivation to make you great. You need something that doesn't depend on how you feel. You need discipline. Discipline is the grind that doesn't care about your emotions. It's the voice inside that says, I don't care if you're tired. Get up anyway. It's the force that keeps you consistent when the excitement is gone. And that's where transformation begins, when you do the work, not because you want to, but because you have to. Everybody wants results. Everybody wants success, peace, control, respect. But not everyone is willing to pay the price. They want the reward without the repetition, the glory without the grind. They talk about change, but when the alarm rings at 4 a.m., they hit snooze. That's the difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you going. Motivation is loud. Discipline is quiet. Motivation makes promises. Discipline delivers. When you focus on yourself, you start to understand that nothing real grows without consistency. And consistency only comes from discipline, from doing what's necessary every single day, even when it's uncomfortable. There's a dangerous lie people tell themselves that they need to feel ready. That one day the stars will align and they'll suddenly have the perfect mindset, the perfect plan, the perfect energy. That's not how life works. You will never feel ready. If you wait for motivation to carry you, you'll spend your life waiting. Discipline doesn't wait for the perfect moment. Discipline creates the moment. It says, I don't need to feel good to do good. That's the mindset of people who build themselves from the ground up. They don't rely on moods. They rely on standards. When you wake up every day, commit to doing what you said you'd do, something powerful happens. You start to trust yourself. You stop being that person who talks big but never follows through. Every rep, every mile, every study session, every hour of work you do when no one's watching, that's a deposit in the account of self-respect. And over time, that account grows. That's where confidence comes from. Not from hype videos, not from quotes on the internet, but from keeping promises to yourself when it's hard. When you build discipline, you build trust. And when you trust yourself, you don't need anyone else's approval anymore. There's nothing glamorous about discipline. It's not pretty. It's not fun. It's waking up when your body screams to stay in bed. It's training when you're sore. It's studying when you're tired. It's pushing forward when no one's clapping. Discipline is pain, repetition, boredom, and loneliness. But it's also freedom. Freedom from regret. Freedom from inconsistency. Freedom from being controlled by your emotions. You see, most people are slaves to how they feel. If they feel tired, they quit. If they feel discouraged, they stop. That's not freedom. That's weakness disguised as self-care. Real freedom comes when you stop negotiating with yourself. When you stop letting your feelings dictate your actions. When your standards become stronger than your excuses. You don't need to be motivated to be consistent. You need to decide who you want to be and live that decision every single day. There will be mornings when you don't want to move. When your mind tells you it's okay to take a break. That's the voice that's been holding you back your whole life. That voice will always try to protect your comfort. But comfort is where dreams go to die. The real growth happens the moment you ignore that voice and move anyway. Because every time you do something you didn't want to do, you're training your mind. You're teaching it who's in control. And over time, that control becomes strength. Discipline doesn't mean you'll always be perfect. You'll fail. You'll fall. You'll break routines. But what separates the discipline from the dreamers is that the disciplined get back up immediately. They don't sit in guilt. They don't wait for motivation to come back. They reset and move. That's the difference. They understand that discipline is not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about doing something enough times that quitting stops being an option. When you live like that, life starts falling into place because you become dependable, not just to others, but to yourself. When you focus on yourself, you start noticing how easy it is for people to talk about success, but how rare it is to see it. That's because most people are chasing feelings, not results. They want to feel inspired instead of being consistent. But feelings are temporary. Discipline is permanent. The ones who truly change their lives aren't the loud ones. They're the ones who keep their heads down and stay locked in. They don't care if anyone notices. They care about the work. They care about becoming sharper, stronger, and more resilient. They understand that the path to greatness is boring most of the time, and they're okay with that. The world glorifies the end result, the transformation, the success story, the win. But what the world doesn't see is the process, the hundreds of silent mornings, the endless practice sessions, the sacrifices that no one celebrates. That's where the real battle is fought, in the shadows. Discipline is forged there. When you're working while others sleep, when you're staying focused while others waste time, when you're building yourself in silence while everyone else talks. That's when you start separating yourself. You don't need to be better than anyone else. You just need to be consistent longer than they can handle. When you become disciplined, you start living differently. You don't chase moods, you chase mastery. You stop reacting to every emotion because you understand that your goals don't care how you feel. They only care what you do. You start finding peace in the process instead of waiting for the outcome. That's when life starts to align. That's when things start falling into place because you're finally living by your own standards, not by motivation that fades or people's opinions that change. Discipline also brings clarity. When you live by structure, when your actions align with your goals, you stop wasting energy on distractions. You stop needing external motivation because your vision itself becomes fuel. You no longer need a reason to work hard. You are the reason. That's when you become dangerous, not in a violent way, but in a focused way. You become unstoppable because your effort doesn't depend on how you feel. It depends on who you are. So stop waiting to feel inspired. Stop chasing that rush of motivation that disappears as quickly as it comes. Build discipline. Build the muscle of doing what's required no matter what. Show up on the bad days. Show up when you're tired. Show up when no one's cheering. That's how you build a life that doesn't crumble when things get hard. That's how you earn peace, power, and purpose. Because in the end, when you focus on yourself long enough, when you commit to being disciplined instead of motivated, everything begins to align. You'll wake up one day and realize you become someone you can respect. You've become consistent. You've become reliable. You've become the kind of person who doesn't need motivation to move because you've built a life around standards, not feelings. That's the kind of strength that can't be faked. That's when everything falls into place, not because life got easier, but because you got disciplined enough to handle it all. The world is loud. Everywhere you turn, someone's talking, posting, shouting, bragging. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's got advice. Everyone's got something to say about your life. You're surrounded by noise, distractions dressed as entertainment, comfort disguised as connection. And if you're not careful, that noise becomes your reality. It pulls you away from your goals, away from your peace, away from yourself. When you focus on yourself, one of the hardest but most powerful things you can do is learn to go silent. Because silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Silence is where you meet the real you. Silence is where growth happens. Most people can't stand being alone with their own thoughts. They need the constant buzz, the phone in their hand, the music blasting, the TV in the background, someone always talking. Because in the quiet, the truth starts speaking. In the quiet, you hear the things you've been running from, the doubt, the fear, the regret, the potential you've ignored. And that's uncomfortable. But that's also where transformation begins. The moment you cut the noise, you start seeing yourself clearly. You start hearing your own voice instead of everyone else's. And that's the voice that will guide you to where you need to go. People love to talk about grinding, about chasing success, about staying focused. But how can you focus when your mind is full of noise? How can you hear your own goals when you're constantly comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel? That's why you have to step away from the chaos. You have to unplug, disconnect, and get comfortable with silence. Because the truth is, most of your progress will happen when no one's watching. When you're alone in that dark room, tired, frustrated, ready to quit, that's where character is built. That's where self-respect is born. Not in the spotlight, not on social media, not in the approval of others, but in silence. When you start working in silence, something changes inside you. You stop wasting energy proving yourself. You stop explaining your vision to people who never understand it. You stop trying to convince the world that you're doing something meaningful, and you just do it. You start putting your energy where it belongs, into the work, into your habits, your discipline, your craft, and slowly the noise fades. The distractions lose their power. The opinions that used to bother you start to sound meaningless. Because when you're locked in on your mission, everything else becomes background static. People will call you distant. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You're not the same person anymore. You're not chasing attention. You're chasing growth. You're not talking about your goals. You're living them. You're not performing for applause. You're performing for progress. And that's a dangerous shift because most people don't operate from that space. Most people need validation to keep going. But when you learn to work without it, when you learn to find peace in silence, you become unstoppable. Silence is where you build your edge. It's where you sharpen your mind, where you develop patience, where you learn to control your emotions. Because when you're surrounded by noise, every little thing gets a reaction. Someone doubts you, you respond. Someone criticizes you, you defend. Someone gets ahead, you compare. But when you're working in silence, you're too busy growing to care. You don't respond to nonsense. You don't explain yourself. You let your results do the talking. You let your consistency speak louder than any words ever could. The problem with noise is that it feeds your ego. It tricks you into thinking that being seen is the same as being successful. But being seen doesn't make you great. Being consistent does. Being disciplined does. Every time you post before you've produced, you're robbing yourself of the hunger that builds greatness. You're feeding your ego when you should be feeding your purpose. The real ones understand this. They disappear. They vanish from the spotlight for months, sometimes years. They go quiet, and when they come back, they're unrecognizable, sharper, stronger, unstoppable. That's the power of silence. Silence isn't just about avoiding noise from others. It's about silencing your own mind too. That inner voice that tells you you're not enough, that whispers you should give up, that screams when things get hard, that's the loudest noise of all. You have to learn to quiet that voice through discipline, through consistency, through action. The only way to silence self-doubt is by doing the work. You can't talk your way out of it. You can't wish it away. You fight it with proof by showing yourself day after day that you can do what you said you would. Every rep, every step, every hour of focus is another layer of silence added over that noise. When you live in silence, you see how powerful peace really is. You realize that you don't need constant stimulation. You don't need to be heard all the time. You don't need to explain your process. You just need to execute. Silence teaches you to be patient. It teaches you to move with intention. It teaches you to value your energy, to spend it wisely. You stop reacting to every distraction because you understand that focus is your weapon, and silence is the environment that keeps it sharp. The people who build legacies aren't the loudest. They're the most disciplined. They work when others are talking. They practice when others are posting. They plan when others are wasting time. Their silence is misunderstood at first, but eventually it becomes respected because results speak louder than noise. You don't have to announce your grind. Your growth will announce it for you. You don't have to tell the world what you're doing. Your transformation will make it obvious. When you start cutting the noise, you'll realize how much time you used to waste. You'll see how many things didn't matter, how many opinions didn't help, how many distractions kept you average. And you'll get angry at yourself for letting that happen. But that anger is fuel. Use it. Use it to stay locked in. Use it to remind yourself why you started focusing on yourself in the first place. Because this isn't about shutting the world out. It's about tuning into your own frequency. It's about creating a life that makes sense to you, not to them. And when you do that, when you master silence, everything starts to fall into place. You stop chasing noise and start attracting clarity. You stop craving validation and start building self-respect. You stop running from discomfort and start facing it head on. Your goals become clearer. Your mind becomes stronger. Your purpose becomes unshakable. You realize that the world doesn't owe you attention. It owes you nothing. But when you put in the work quietly, life begins to reward you loudly. There will come a day when the same people who ignored your silence will have no choice but to respect your results. And when that day comes, you won't even care, because by then you'll understand the truth. Peace is louder than applause. Silence is stronger than noise. And when you focus on yourself long enough, you realize that you never needed to speak to be heard. You just needed to stay disciplined, stay consistent, and let your work echo for you. That's when everything truly falls into place. When the noise fades, the doubt dies, and all that's left is a stronger, sharper, unstoppable version of you. Pain isn't your enemy. It's your greatest teacher. But most people spend their whole lives running from it. They hide behind comfort, behind excuses, behind distractions, anything to avoid feeling discomfort. And that's why they stay stuck. Because every time you avoid pain, you avoid growth. Every time you choose the easy route, you stay the same. Pain is the doorway to everything you say you want. Strength, discipline, peace, confidence. You can't reach any of it without going through the hard part first. The truth is, the person you want to become is waiting for you on the other side of suffering. When you start focusing on yourself, you realize that pain isn't there to destroy you. It's there to rebuild you. It's life's way of testing your limits, of asking you, how bad do you want it? You say you want to change. You say you want success. You say you want to become unstoppable. Then pain shows up to see if you mean it. Because talk is easy. Motivation is easy. But when the grind starts to hurt, when your body is exhausted, when your mind starts screaming to quit, that's when the truth shows up. That's when you find out who you really are. Everyone wants the result, but no one wants the suffering that comes with it. You can't build strength without resistance. You can't build resilience without failure. You can't build self-respect without struggle. Pain gives you all of that, but it doesn't come gift wrapped. It comes through long nights, through doubt, through sacrifice, through disappointment. Pain strips away your comfort, your excuses, your ego. It forces you to see yourself for who you really are, not who you pretend to be. That's why most people can't handle it, because pain tells the truth. When you start embracing pain instead of avoiding it, everything changes. You stop running. You stop blaming. You stop looking for shortcuts. You begin to understand that the struggle is part of the process. Every time you go through something hard, you're building mental calluses. You're teaching your mind to handle chaos without breaking. You're proving to yourself that you can endure more than you thought possible. And once you learn that, nothing scares you anymore. Because when you've been through hell and survived, life loses its power to intimidate you. There's a kind of peace that comes from surviving pain, a deep, quiet confidence that no one can give you. It's not loud. It doesn't need validation. It's earned. You earn it by pushing through when everything in you says stop. You earn it when you train your body in pain, when you discipline your mind under pressure, when you refuse to fold even when no one would blame you for quitting. That's the kind of strength you can't fake. It's not built in comfort. It's built in suffering. Most people want to be mentally tough, but they don't want to go through what creates it. They want the confidence, the power, the peace. But those things are built in the fire. You don't learn resilience when everything's going your way. You learn it when everything falls apart and you still find a way to move. You don't develop patience in comfort. You build it through frustration. You don't gain perspective in ease. You gain it through failure. Pain gives you all the lessons life has to offer, if you're willing to listen. When you're in pain, it's easy to think it's punishment, but it's not. It's preparation. Life isn't trying to break you. It's trying to shape you. The things that hurt you now are building the strength you'll need later. Every setback, every disappointment, every heartbreak, they're all chiseling you into something sharper. You might not see it while you're in it, but every ounce of suffering is molding you into the kind of person who can handle what's coming next. Because if you can't endure small pain, you'll never be ready for bigger challenges. When you focus on yourself, you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That shift changes everything. Pain stops being the enemy and becomes your coach. Every struggle has a lesson. Maybe it's patience, maybe it's humility, maybe it's strength. But if you run from it, you'll never learn it. Pain will keep showing up until you face it, because you can't outrun what you're meant to overcome. The best version of you doesn't come from comfort. It's born in pain. The strongest people you admire didn't get there because life was kind to them. They got there because they kept showing up when it wasn't. They built themselves in darkness. They suffered in silence. They didn't wait for things to get easier. They got stronger instead. And that's what focusing on yourself is all about. Turning pain into power. Taking every hardship and using it as fuel to become someone who refuses to break. When you start to embrace pain, you realize that fear loses its grip on you. You stop being afraid of failure because you've learned that failing doesn't kill you. Quitting does. You stop being afraid of rejection because you've learned that other people's opinions don't define you. You stop being afraid of discomfort because you know that every time you push through it, you grow. Pain becomes your compass. If something scares you or challenges you, it's usually the thing you need to face next. Pain also teaches you appreciation. When you've gone through hard times, you learn to value peace differently. You stop taking things for granted because you know how easily they can be lost. You start seeing beauty in simplicity, in effort, in progress, in consistency. You learn to be grateful, not for what's easy, but for what's earned. That gratitude changes your perspective. It gives meaning to the struggle. You stop seeing pain as something to escape and start seeing it as something that gave you depth. There will be days when pain feels unbearable, when you're mentally exhausted, physically drained, and emotionally done. Those are the moments that define you. That's when you have to remind yourself why you started. You have to dig deep and find the strength to keep moving even when it hurts. Because every step you take through pain is a step closer to power. Every time you refuse to quit, you rewrite your story. You prove that pain doesn't own you, you own it. Pain doesn't last forever, but the lessons it teaches do. Every scar, every wound, every bruise carries wisdom. It reminds you of what you've survived. It reminds you that you're stronger than you think. So the next time pain shows up, don't run. Don't hide. Don't complain. Welcome it. Face it. Let it do its job. Because when you stop seeing pain as punishment and start seeing it as the price of progress, you'll never fear it again. When you focus on yourself and learn to embrace pain, you stop trying to escape life's challenges and start mastering them. You realize that the very thing that used to break you is now what builds you. You start to move differently, calmer, stronger, more grounded. You stop being controlled by emotions and start being guided by purpose. And that's when everything starts falling into place. Because once you've been through enough pain and survived, you stop doubting your strength. You stop fearing the struggle. You stop needing things to be easy. You finally understand that pain isn't there to stop you. It's there to wake you up. And once you learn to use it, nothing can stop you again. The biggest mistake most people make is thinking they're in competition with the world. They're watching everyone else's path, comparing every step, and wondering why they're not where others are. But the truth is, there's only one person you're supposed to be competing with, the person you were yesterday. That's the real battle. That's the fight that matters. Every single day, you wake up with a choice to repeat who you were or to evolve into someone stronger. When you focus on yourself, you stop chasing other people's pace and start mastering your own. Comparison is poison. It steals your energy, your focus, your joy. You scroll through someone's highlight reel and start questioning your worth. You see their success, but never their struggle. You see their wins, but never their wounds. And yet, you let that image dictate how you feel about your own progress. You start moving faster, not because you're driven, but because you're desperate to catch up. That's how people burn out. That's how people lose themselves. Because when you live in comparison, you lose sight of your own mission. You forget that your journey has its own timing. When you stop competing with others, you free yourself to grow. You realize that every person is fighting a different battle, walking a different path, carrying a different weight. You stop trying to be better than them and you start trying to be better than you. That's where real growth happens, because the version of you that woke up yesterday might have been lazy, distracted, undisciplined, soft, and today is your chance to fix that. Every day is another opportunity to close the gap between who you are and who you're supposed to be. You don't have to make giant leaps. You just have to move 1 inch forward every day. That's what focusing on yourself is about. Progress, not perfection. People want to change their lives overnight, but that's not how transformation works. It's slow. It's painful. It's repetitive, but that's what makes it real. Every day you push a little harder, think a little sharper, control your emotions a little better. That's how you grow one small victory at a time. And those small wins add up. They turn into confidence, strength, and momentum. The problem is that people want results without the patience to earn them. They want to be someone new without letting go of who they were. You can't become your best self if you're still clinging to your old habits, your old mindset, your old excuses. You have to kill your old self every single day. The lazy version of you, the fearful version, the undisciplined version, they have to die so the stronger one can live. That's the real competition. Every morning you wake up, you face that person. And every decision you make to get up or stay in bed, to train or make excuses, to focus or procrastinate, determines who wins that battle. When you focus on your own race, you stop needing validation. You stop caring about who's watching or who's ahead. You start building in silence, locked in, consistent, patient. You start realizing that growth is internal. It's not about how fast you go. It's about how long you can stay committed. The best in the world didn't get there because they were competing with everyone else. They got there because they refused to stop improving. They stayed obsessed with progress, even when no one noticed. They didn't measure success by trophies or applause. They measured it by how much better they became over time. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to prove to yourself that you can keep showing up. Every rep you do when no one's watching, every time you push through pain, every time you choose discipline over comfort. That's proof. That's growth. That's progress. You start earning your own respect. And once you earn that, you don't need validation from anyone else. Because there's no better feeling than knowing you gave everything you had, not for attention, but for yourself. Competing with yourself also teaches you humility. Because when you look in the mirror every day, you realize how far you still have to go. You realize how much more you can do, how much stronger you can become, how much sharper your mind can be. You stop pretending you've arrived and start working like you never will. That's the mindset that keeps you hungry. The day you think you're done improving is the day you start falling behind. So stay humble, stay grounded, because there's always a better version of you waiting to be built. Every day is a test. Some days you'll win, some days you'll lose. But even the bad days matter, maybe even more than the good ones. Because losing to yourself teaches you where your weaknesses are. It exposes what you need to fix. Most people hate failure, but the disciplined ones study it. They don't hide from it, they learn from it. They take that loss personally, not to beat themselves up, but to come back sharper. That's what competing with yourself is about, using every failure as fuel to rise again stronger. You can't fake growth. You can't talk your way into being better. The mirror doesn't lie. The results don't lie. Your habits don't lie. If you want to know how much progress you're making, look at how you spend your days. Look at how you respond when no one's watching. Look at how consistent you've been. That's the truth right there. That's why focusing on yourself matters. Because the real work is internal. It's not about appearances, it's about accountability. When you stay locked into your own lane, peace follows. Because you stop wasting energy comparing, explaining, competing. You start living with purpose. You start appreciating your progress. You start respecting your journey. And slowly, life begins to fall into place. Not because it got easier, but because you stopped getting in your own way. You realize that you were never in competition with anyone else. It was always you versus you, your discipline versus your doubt, your growth versus your comfort, your future versus your past. The day you decide to fight that battle, really fight it, is the day everything changes. You stop being distracted by noise. You stop getting discouraged by other people's wins. You start living with tunnel vision, focused only on your own path. You stop chasing validation and start chasing mastery. You understand that success isn't about being better than others. It's about being unrecognizable compared to who you used to be. You'll notice something powerful happens when you commit to this kind of growth. The more you compete with yourself, the more confident you become. Because you're not relying on luck or talent. You're relying on effort. You know the work you've done. You know the pain you've endured. You know the sacrifices you've made. That kind of confidence can't be faked and it can't be taken away. It's earned. It's built through discipline, consistency, and self-focus. At some point, you'll look back and realize that the person you used to be wouldn't even recognize who you've become. You'll remember the old habits, the excuses, the doubt, and you'll be grateful for every moment you chose to fight through instead of giving in. Because that's how you grow. Not all at once, but little by little, day by day. Every morning, you're reborn with a chance to be better. And every night, you get to look back and ask, did I win against myself today? That's what life is about, constant evolution. You don't stop when you're tired. You stop when you're better. You don't chase perfection. You chase progress. You don't compete with others. You compete with the person you were yesterday. Because the only real success is becoming someone you can respect, someone you can trust, someone who never stops improving. And when you reach that point, when you finally understand that you're your own competition, everything starts to align. The noise fades, the pressure disappears, and all that's left is clarity, focus, and power. That's when everything truly falls into place, not because the world changed, but because you did. Peace doesn't come from comfort. It comes from control. Control over your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, and your habits. Everyone wants peace, but most people chase it in all the wrong places. They think peace is found in rest, in distraction, in comfort. But that kind of peace is temporary. It's a lie you tell yourself to avoid facing the truth. Real peace comes when you stop running from your problems and start mastering yourself. It's not about escaping chaos. It's about being calm in the middle of it. When you focus on yourself, you start realizing that life doesn't get quieter. You do. The noise outside never stops people talking, opinions flying, challenges stacking. But when you build inner control, all that noise loses its power over you. You stop reacting to everything that happens around you. You stop letting the world dictate how you feel. You learn to breathe through pain, to move through pressure, to think when others panic. That's real peace, not avoidance, but strength. Most people confuse peace with ease. They think peace is lying in bed, doing nothing, avoiding stress. But that's not peace. That's weakness wearing a mask. Comfort makes you soft. It makes you dependent. It tricks you into thinking you're fine when deep down, you know you're wasting potential. Peace is not the absence of struggle. It's the ability to stay grounded inside it. When you control your reactions, your mindset, and your actions, you can walk through storms and still stay calm. Control starts with awareness. You can't control what you don't understand. That's why most people feel lost. They don't even realize how controlled they are by their own impulses. They react without thinking. Someone says something, they get angry. Something goes wrong, they break down. That's not life, that's slavery to emotion. The day you decide to take back control of your reactions is the day you start becoming free. You learn that not everything deserves your energy. You stop giving power to things that don't matter. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And that response determines everything: your peace, your growth, your direction. When you focus on yourself, you start mastering that space between what happens and how you react. That's where power lives. That's where you learn to stay composed under pressure. Life will keep throwing punches. You can't stop that, but you can learn to take the hit, adjust, and keep moving forward. That's control. That's peace. It's easy to be calm when everything is going your way. It's easy to be positive when life feels light. But peace isn't built in the good times. It's built in chaos, in the moments when everything feels like it's falling apart and you still refuse to break. That's when you find out what kind of person you really are. Do you panic? Do you fold? Or do you breathe, adapt, and keep pushing? That's where inner peace is born, through the discipline of control. Control doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being ruled by your feelings. You can feel anger without letting it control your tongue. You can feel fear without letting it paralyze your steps. You can feel doubt without letting it steal your progress. The world tells you to let it all out, but sometimes you need to hold it in, process it, and use it. Emotion is energy. You can waste it on reactions or invest it into progress. That's what focused people do. They take their emotions and turn them into fuel. When you live without control, you're a slave to everything around you. Your phone, your habits, your urges, your comfort zone. You let little things throw you off balance. You wake up tired, scroll for hours, complain, procrastinate, and then you wonder why your life feels chaotic. It's because you've surrendered control. You've handed over your peace to things that don't deserve it. But when you take it back, when you start choosing discipline over distraction, everything changes. Your energy shifts. Your focus sharpens. Your peace returns. Peace isn't soft. Peace is power. It's not about sitting still. It's about standing firm. When you have control, you stop being easily shaken. People can talk, situations can change, and chaos can rise, but you don't move. You're grounded. You've built your peace through discipline, not comfort. You've faced your demons, not hidden from them. That's why nobody can take that peace away from you. It wasn't given to you. It was earned. Control also means knowing when to act and when to wait. Most people react too quickly. They make emotional decisions that lead to regret. But when you've trained your mind, you learn to pause. You learn to breathe before responding. That pause, that second of awareness, that's control. It's the difference between peace and chaos, between growth and destruction. The strongest people are not those who fight everything. They're the ones who know when to stay still and when to strike. When you focus on yourself long enough, you realize that peace is a byproduct of mastery. Mastery over your habits, your mind, your environment. You can't have peace when your life is ruled by inconsistency. You can't have peace when you let laziness dictate your actions. You can't have peace when you don't trust yourself to do what you said you do. That's why control is everything. When your actions align with your words, your confidence grows. And when your confidence grows, your mind settles. That's peace earned through consistency. Comfort destroys that consistency. Comfort tells you you've done enough. Comfort whispers, take it easy. And every time you listen, you lose a little control. The more you chase comfort, the weaker you get. You start to settle, you start to slip, and soon your life becomes a cycle of excuses. But when you deny comfort, when you choose the hard thing, you gain power. You start proving to yourself that you're in charge, not your feelings. Every time you resist comfort, you build discipline. And discipline is the foundation of peace. Control is also about acceptance. Not everything will go your way, and that's fine. Control isn't about changing everything. It's about staying unshaken no matter what changes. You stop wasting energy fighting reality. You adapt, you adjust, you move. That's how warriors live, not expecting peace, but creating it. They know the world won't slow down, so they learn to move with it, not against it. That's real strength, being unbothered by chaos because you've mastered your response to it. When you gain control, you stop needing the world to behave a certain way for you to be okay. You stop depending on circumstances to feel peace. Whether it's raining or shining, whether you win or lose, whether people love or hate you, you stay centered. You start living from the inside out instead of the outside in. You become your own source of calm, your own source of strength. That's why control is freedom. Because once you master yourself, nothing outside can control you again. People think peace means escaping pain, but real peace means walking through pain without losing yourself. It's understanding that life will always have chaos, but chaos doesn't have to have you. When you focus on yourself, you learn that peace isn't passive. It's active. It's something you fight for every day. You train for it like a muscle. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, focus over distraction, self-control over impulse, you're building peace. Eventually, you reach a point where your peace becomes untouchable. The world still throws storms your way, but you've built an anchor within. You don't depend on comfort anymore. You don't need everything to go right. You've learned to stay composed, confident, and calm no matter what's happening. That's when you truly understand that peace isn't found. It's built. It's built through self-control, through focus, through facing the uncomfortable parts of yourself until you master them. And once you reach that level of control, everything starts falling into place. You think clearer. You act smarter. You move stronger. You stop wasting energy on chaos and start investing it into growth. You stop needing life to be easy because you've learned how to be unbreakable. That's what it means to focus on yourself. That's what it means to build peace through control, not comfort. Because when you finally master yourself, when you stop chasing ease and start chasing discipline, that's when the world stops controlling you. That's when you stop surviving and start living. That's when everything piece by piece begins to fall perfectly into place.